The integral, the benchmark and reference point for integral is the renowned Ken Wilber's work and his 4 quadrants, which in a sense have always been in the background for us, but in a sense not in the foreground, because the foreground and what distinguishes us from Wilber's great work is our deep, deep rootedness in nature and culture of a particular place. The world of Africa, the world of Black Africa, that indigenous world, which somehow to me was all important and yet was missing from view. And because I grew up in a business family, my father was a very prominent businessman, and therefore my first degree was in economics, because that is the way I was kind of led. It was increasingly incongruous to me. I increasingly felt a kind of schizophrenia that I lived in a Black world of the South, and yet, in a sense, everything around me was Western and Northern, and I couldn't make sense of it. My first degree in economics was all Anglo-Saxon economics. We just never touched base with Africa. And when I moved from there on to first accounting and then Harvard Business School, it was the same story. It was all about the West, and in a sense, the rest should follow. And if you like, other worlds like science and philosophy and art were, I would say, colonized by that Western world. So that really informed my thinking, where I said, yes, I know about the West, I know about the North. I took an early interest in my youth in the East, in Eastern philosophy, particularly Indian philosophy and then Japanese management, but the South was completely missed. So I somehow had to, in my own mind, formulate some way in which East, South, North, and West could meet. And to that extent, overturn the whole business curriculum, because I became an academic in the business world, and I also ran a business for part of my life, in which, in a sense, the Wests were so utterly predominant. And interestingly enough, although, if you like, in economics, the West was a fairly broad-based West, because certainly the French and the Germans and the Italians, as well as the Americans, had their contribution to make. When it came to business management, it was totally Western. It was totally America. So that formed the background to begin to say to myself, how do we reformulate the whole world of business? And I have to say that as a business family person interested in economics, it always struck me as totally incongruous that you could study economics apart from business and business apart from economics. Economics is made up of businesses. The one is a readout of the other. The one is micro, the other is micro. So I was on this simultaneous track to reinvent business and to reinvent economics, which incidentally most people are not doing. They actually engage with one or another. And it struck me that it's all very well to talk about, I'm fast forwarding later in life, to social enterprise, to social entrepreneurship. But if you don't reformulate the very business of business to make it worldly, to make it Southern, East, and Northern, and Western. And our first major book in that respect with Alexander Schiffer as Transform, we created Transform in a sense as the embodiment of the integral, was in a sense to recreate the business world so that marketing became community building. Human resources became conscious evolution. Operations became knowledge creation, finance became sustainable development. That was a book written in 2009. Nobody has repeated that kind of thinking since. We stand in kind of isolation because the business world, the Harvard Business School world, still dominates to the extent that everybody thinks about business. But of course, we need sustainable development and we need social enterprise. To us, this is kind of ridiculous. You have to reformulate the very business of business. Now, having done that, and in a sense written about it and built it into our PhD program, our next step was to say we need to do the same kind of thing for economics. So we reconstructed integrally the whole of economics at a Southern and Eastern and Northern and Western. Now, that's all very well, but most people study economics and business in business schools or schools of economics. So we had to then turn to education, and we reformulated the whole agenda of education, most particularly from the point of view of research methodology, which, if you like, is the key architecture for higher education in terms of the integral world.